Good evening, everyone, and for the first time of this new Jewish year, Shana Tova. Delighted that you're here. If you've never been here before, or if you haven't been here in a while, welcome to ACI. My name is Rabbi Joshua Rabin. I have the distinct honor and privilege of being the rabbi at this synagogue. You can always tell as a rabbi, kind of what attendance you're going to get based on when holidays start. Wednesday of the middle of the week, usually a little bit on the lighter side. So people will come in a few minutes, but we're going to still get started because you all were here on time. And I am grateful for that. If you need a little bit of an introduction, the Machzorim that we use for Rosh Hashanah are these gray books in the back. When you come in, if it's today or any other day, you'll see there are some other books that have like a dark blue binding. Don't take those. You'll be using them for a different part of the Jewish calendar. But for the next 2 days, if you come back for Yom Kippur, which I hope you all will, use the gray books. And now, let's just take a moment to enter into this new year. I was saying to several people that I was kind of hoping the Rosh Hashanah would start off a little quieter in the world. That does not seem to be the reality that we're in, but we come to synagogue to set ourselves and take a breath. So everyone just take a moment and just breathe for a minute with me. And as we make this transition into the old year, into the new, please rise, page 20. For the Baruch Hu, as we begin the Ma'ariv service. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborach, Baruch Adonai Hamborach, Leolam Voed. You may be seated. We are continuing quietly the second paragraph on page 20. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uvein laila Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam taminim lo chaleinu leolam voed Baruch Adonai Hamariv Arabim, page 20 at the bottom. Avat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha, V'Torah U'Mitzvot Elohim Mishpatim Otanu Lemane Torah Adonai Elohim Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yamenu uvahem nege yomam balayla v'avatcha atasim mimenu le'olamim Baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Page 22, the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'kol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele Asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'ham v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shopecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam leot al yadecha v'ayulot otafot b'neinecha uv'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha ובשעריך והיה שמע תשמעו מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווכם היום וקשרתם אותם להיות על ידכם ובניכם ונתתם אותם לבניכם לדבר בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשופך ובקומך ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר על בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם יעשו להם ציצית על כנפי ביתיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בתל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני אותם לא תטו רוח אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים אלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 24. Emavachuna. Eloheinu ve'enzulato v'nisim v'haravato u'maftim b'neicha. Umalchuto bratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'vnei Yisrael achanu shira b'simcha rabah v'yamru chulam mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Nora tehilot osef ele malchutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe ze'eli anu ve'ameru Adonai yimloch leolam voed ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Page 26 at the bottom. Ashkiveinu Eloheinu Shalom v'amidenu malkeinu l'chaim ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Ushmor tzeiteinu vo'enel chayim shalom me'ata v'ad olam ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha baruch ata Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. Page 28. Tiku v'chodesh shofar v'chesed liyom chagenu ki chok leYisrael hu mishpat leElohei Yaakov. We continue with the Chatzi Kaddish, page 28. Yitgadal v'yitkash Shemei Rabbah v'yamad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayechol be'Yisrael v'agala b'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mivarach le'alam u'lame'amaya yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala Shemei Kudsha brichu Le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, ve'imru amen. We continue and rise on page 30. For the Amidah, for Ma'ariv. Please recite the Amidah in Hebrew or English, whichever language is most meaningful to you. This is also a perfect opportunity to offer your own personal prayers that you would like to say before God. Erev said you should not be packers from the becoming. Yisrael, When you've concluded, you may be seated. Ose shalom bimroma, buyas shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Shalom bimroma, buyas shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Once again, welcome, good evening, Shana Tova. I'm Rabbi Joshua Rabin, and I'm so glad you're here. I've made this joke on Shabbat morning once or twice in the last month, but since it's well established that synagogues are much more full on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you will have not heard this joke before unless you were here every Saturday. It's sort of a joke of the trade of being a rabbi that when the high holidays approach, rabbis are chasing sermon topics because they know that it's going to be the largest crowds they have of the year, most likely, and people are going to pay extra special attention to what they say. The Hebrew in services for a lot of people is harder, and so whatever comes out of the rabbi's mouth in English is going to be much more remembered than, some particular piyut, some particular poem we'll sing over the next week and a half. So how many ways can you actually every year come up with a topic to speak about? It's not that easy, especially when you consider the fact that most rabbis will end up working on the Yamim Noraim for 30, 40 years. So there's this idea that we're chasing sermons. This year, however, a rabbi who I have a pleasure to know, who teaches other rabbis how to give sermons, whose name is Rabbi Ed Feinstein of Los Angeles, jokes that this year the sermon topics are chasing us. Because it wasn't hard to decide what people need to talk about this year. But the flip side is that when you know exactly what everyone is expecting you to talk about, that in some sense is not liberating. It actually can be a lot of pressure. What exactly do you say after a year like this one? What exactly do you say on the eve of the first anniversary of October 7th, also being the beginning of a Jewish New Year? And it's not like we're looking at events that have happened a year ago in the rearview mirror. We are looking at them as they are happening right now. So what I decided was that I also can't fall into the trap of speaking about all those things so much to the exclusion of the possibility that anybody in this room has anything else in this year that they need to reflect upon, right? Things happen. People fall in love, they get married, people die, people get sick, people change jobs, people have things that change. And so you have to somehow figure out a way to talk about events that everyone has on their mind, while also recognizing that every person who comes into a sanctuary on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, anywhere in the world, has had their own year with its own ups and downs. So what I decided to do was that every one of my sermons, and I suppose none of them, will be about events over this past year at the same time, which is to say that each time I speak, I'm going to talk about something that is a driving emotion that has been a part of this year in some way, for good or for bad. We'll talk a little bit about what's happened and what's still happening, but we'll also try and zoom out on it a little bit to think about how exactly do we name those emotions and those feelings in a way that not only informs how we're dealing with the very stressful moments of the present, but also the fact that we have the rest of our lives to live. We'll talk about fear, we'll talk about compassion, we'll talk about peace, we'll talk about death, and first, we're going to talk a little bit about hope. Now, you might be wondering, why start with hope? I mean, what could you possibly hope for after this past year? But to me, there is a difference between a feeling of hopelessness and an obligation to hope. And in a sense, that is something that very much our tradition puts in front of us as we prepare for the Yamim Noraim, right? The psalm that we start reciting on the first day of the month of Elul, and we will recite every day for those who pray every day until Hoshana Rabbah, which is only a couple of weeks from now, is a psalm that ends with a call to hope. And by the way, for those who haven't been here before, I almost always give out a handout. It's also a way for you to occupy your mind with other things if you get bored. We don't discuss every single text that's in here, but it's something to spark your own thinking. But the key passage in the psalm that we recite every day, we're going to recite it tonight before we leave, is hope in the Lord, be strong. Let your heart take courage. Hope in the Lord. Kavet el Adonai chazak v'ametz libecha. The kavet el Adonai. That is the theme of this psalm that we recite every single day on the month prior to what is also known as the Day of Judgment. Even in a normal year, we're supposed to imagine that this year is where we take an accounting of everything that we've done, good, bad, or somewhere in between. And we're supposed to also sit with our mortality. And so what does it say that the psalm we have to recite is one about hope? Because the high holidays are meant to make you feel very small. And not just if you walk into a synagogue for the first time in a while and you're not really sure what's going on. It's supposed to make us small in the grand scheme of things. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But when we feel strong, it can feel hard to hope. And when we live in a world with events that we've had to confront over the past year, it's really hard to be hopeful. But an obligation to hope is different than a feeling of hopelessness. And this is how our rabbis interpret this psalm. Rabbi Kama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, says, hope in the Lord, be strong in heart, take courage, hope in the Lord. Why on earth does this verse say the word hope twice? It's a metaphor. If you hope and things don't work out the way you hope again. And if it doesn't work out that time, try again. Try again. And the truth is that after this past year, I have a lot of reasons to feel obligated to hope, for different reasons, for reasons that in some ways can also contradict each other at the same time. Because ultimately what hope is about believing that something can be better tomorrow than it is today. And I don't necessarily have to decide today how all of those things are going to fit together. But there's nothing wrong with my hoping that somehow it will work out those ways. So what do I have to be hopeful for? I have an obligation. We have an obligation to hope for the hostages who have been living weeks, months, and now just on the precipice of saying years under terrible conditions. We can't hope for them because they are living in days that we can't possibly imagine right now. And who are we to give up hope for their release, for them to feel forgotten? And by the way, when there have been hostages released, whether they've been saved in a prisoner swap or they've been saved by way of the IDF, the things that they talked about the most was the days that they felt the least amount of hope. And those of us who are fortunate enough to not be in that horrible, horrible situation, we have an obligation to hope for them on their behalf. I hope for those who protect Israel, not just the IDF and the Mossad, but the people who on October 7th literally drove into the fire to save other people. Most people, when they see a disaster, run away from the fire. But on that day, there were people who ran into the fire because they knew they had no other choice. Hope for the organizers, the people who work every day to ensure that the needs of Jewish people, that the needs of the state of Israel are seen and heard. And if necessary, make them seen and heard with authority because someone's not taking it seriously enough. But there's also hope for the healers, the people who sheltered Israelis displaced from their homes, or people who rushed into Gaza to give polio vaccines to Palestinian children, or marching to make sure that the memories of the hostages don't fade. We have an obligation to hope for them. And hope for the peacemakers. There's nothing worse in this time of so much violence and conflict to even imagine the world for peace, but that's the difference between a feeling of hopelessness and an obligation to hope. You aren't allowed in Judaism to give up hope of the idea of there being a better world. And that's why I also hope for the Palestinians. They don't deserve to live in a terrible world either. Who deserves to live in a world like that? And it's okay to disagree with the person next to you or the people that you love in your life about what are the sources of their pain. But don't deny that they're not in pain also, and that they deserve hope too. And then, of course, hope for the Jewish people, because unfortunately, we've been down in similar holes before, and we'll find a way out. That, my friends, is the obligation to hope. This poem from Anne Sexton called Courage is about the idea that at any point in a person's life, there will be little and big moments where you have to show courage. I'd like to read it to you. It is in the small things we see it. The child's first step, as awesome as an earthquake. The first time you rode a bike, wallowing up the sidewalk. The first spanking when your heart went on a journey all alone. When they called you crybaby, or poor, or fatty, or crazy, and made you into an alien. You drank their acid and concealed it. Later, if you have endured great despair, then you did it alone, getting a transfusion from the fire, picking the scabs off your heart, then wringing out like a sock. Next, my kin, you powdered your sorrow. You gave it a back rub, and you covered it with a blanket. And after it had slept a while, it woke to the wings of the roses and was transformed. Later, if you faced the deaths of bombs and bullets, you did not do it with a banner. You did it only a hat to cover your heart. You did not fondle the weakness inside you, though it was there. Your courage was a small coal that you kept swallowing. If your buddy saved you and died himself in so doing, then his courage was not courage. It was love. Love as simple as shaving soap. Later, when you face old age and its natural conclusion, your courage will still be shown in little ways. Each spring will be a sword you'll sharpen. Those you love will live in a fever of love. And you'll bargain with the calendar at the last moment. When death opens the back door, you'll put on your carpet slippers and stride out. It's going to be a powerful couple of days. I'd like to think that Rosh Hashanah is always that way, but something about this year feels a little different. And whatever that's going to look like, we're going to be here to hope together. Hope in the Lord, be strong and of good courage. Hope in the Lord. And if that doesn't work, hope again anyway. Shana Tova. We continue on page 42 with Kaddish Shalem. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei rabba amen b'yamati brachirute v'yamlich malachute v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisroel Bagala ubizman kari veimeru amen amen Yehe shmei rabba mevarach le'alam ulamei amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabah v'yipar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalel Shemei dekudesh shabarichu le'la le'la mikol birkata v'shirata tishbechata v'nechemata damiran bi'alma tushbechata v'nechemata damiran bi'alma v'imeru amen amen Titkabel Sultan Vautchon Dechol Yisrael Chodam Avuhon Dirishmaya Veimeru Amen Amen Yehesh Lamarabba Min Shemaya V'chaim V'chaim Aleinu Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Veimeru Amen Oseh shalom bimroma v'hu yaseh shalom Aleinu Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen. We rise, if you're not already standing, for Kiddush for Rosh Hashanah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol am v'romamanu mikol hashon v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav. Batiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'Ava et Yom HaZikaron hazeh Yom Truah Mikra Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Kivanu V'Karta V'Otanu Kidashta Mikol Hamim Udvarka Emet B'Kayam La'ad Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Al Kol Haaretz Mikadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaZikaron Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shehecheyanu V'Kiyamanu V'Higiyanu Lazman Hazeh. We remain standing on page 48 for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latei gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu koyei haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama shelo sam chalkenu kahem b'gor aleinu kekol hamonam v'anachnu korim ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שננו שמיים יעשר ושם יקרא בשמיים מעל ושכינתו זו בגובה מרמים הוא אלוהינו אינו אדם Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam bo'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. May be seated. We turn to page 52. Psalm for the Yamim Noraim, quietly in the Hebrew. L'David Adonai Orivi Shimimi Ira Adonai Meos Chayan Yechad Sarai V'Avalihem Lo Yirali Bi'im Takum Alai Milchama B'Zot Ani Voteach Achal Shalti Me'et Adonai Tavakesh Shivti B'Veit Adonai Kol Yemei Chayel Achazol B'Nom Aval V'Recha Lo He is B'Veit Yisrael. Asheker v'ifei achamas Lulehem anati l'rot b'tuv Adonai be'eretz chayim kavel anai chazak v'yametz libeka v'kavel This evening is the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei. We observe the following yortzites this week at ACI. Louis Reich, Bessie Stamler, Anna Selter, Saul Bernstein, Miriam Sternfield, Bertha Hatlin, Lucy Gang, Abraham Selpst, Selma Field Hartman, Michael Sklorovsky, Hyman Rubin, Bella Rosenzweig, Samuel Aberman, Philip Pechersky, Ruth Goldstein, Chaya Sarah Brazella, Rebecca Halpern, Jacob Klein, Irving Lehman, Flora Rosenberg, David Eisenberg, Nat Goldstein, Dorothy Kerman, Reuben Gafter, Julia Smith, Mildred Backrack Newman, Mary Tomarans, Joseph Kaknowski, Benjamin Nussenblatt, Sidney Brichta, Rose Fold, Morris Gillert. Those who are mourning, those who are observing yahrzeit, please rise, page 50, for the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Zivarach Hirutei, V'amlich Malchutei, V'chayechon U'vyomechon U'chayedechol Be'Yisrael, V'agala U'vizman Karib V'imru Amen Yehe Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam L'mei Amaya, Yiparach V'yishtabach V'yipa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmedekutsha B'richu, Le'ela Min Kol Birkata V'shirata, Tushbekata v'nechamata damiram b'yamavim ramen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'im ramen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May be seated. Once again, it's wonderful to see all of you. I hope that I'm going to see you all tomorrow morning, just to give you the basic outline for the next couple of days. So both tomorrow morning and Friday morning, Rosh Hashanah services will begin here at 9:30 a.m. There will also be children's programming for various ages. That is all outlined outside. After services on the second day, we will be going to Astoria Park for Tashlich immediately following services. We will be meeting nearby the War Memorial. If you were at Tashlich last year, that's the same location. If you haven't been to Astoria Park in a while, just ask for where the War Memorial is. And believe it or not, after Rosh Hashanah, we still have Shabbat. So Shabbat services will still be here on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. When you leave, please give me the opportunity to greet you and to introduce yourselves that we've never met before. Please say hello to someone you don't know, and please take a honey stick on the way out, right? And an apple slice, excuse me. Take a honey stick and an apple slice. We conclude with the singing of Yigdal on page 54. Yigdal Elohim Chai V'Yishtabach Nimsa V'Yenet El Metziuto Echad V'Yen Yachid Keyichudo Ne'elam V'Gam Ein Sof Le'achduto Ein Lo Demut HaGuf Ve'eno guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon v'en reshit lereshito hino adon olam v'chol notzar yoreg gedulato Umalchuto shefa nevuato netanoel anshe segulato v'tif parto lokam beYisrael kemoshe navi umahabit et emunato Torah temet natan le'amoel Al yanevio neman beito lo yachal yipael v'lo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato tzofeh v'yodea setarenu mabit lesof davar b'kodmato Gomel ish chesed kemifalo noten lerashara kirishato yishlach leketz yamin meshichenu lifdod mechakeketz yeshuato metim yechayel berov chasto Baruch Adei Shem Tehilato Metim Yechayel Berov Chasto Baruch Adei Shem Tehilato Yehi Ratzon Milpanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imhotenu She'Tichkadesh Aleinu Shana Tova U'Metuka. May be the will of our Lord our God, Father of our Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, to make this a sweet, good, sweet new year. Shana Tova U'Metuka. See you all tomorrow morning. Come